We actually were trying to call this presentation How to 10X Like Taylor Swift. Our marketing team changed it up a little bit. But the whole idea around GenAI was that the fact that we're all following Mara's law, that humans typically overestimate the value of technology in the short term and underestimate it in the long term. And that's exactly where we are from a GenAI perspective. We're just getting started. We don't know where it's going. That being said, it takes everyone in this room. It takes people, companies like ours, other companies, and then practitioners to work together to actually get to that state. So curious where you're seeing it even overhyped right now.
So I don't know if you guys have seen those Instagram expectations versus reality kind of things. So, the first photos, chiseled, Adonis, everything's looking good. And then the one after that is it's all kind of hanging out and, people have breathed and the arms have been lost. That's kind of the way I think a lot of people think about AI today. They're waiting for the next big thing, the thing that's going to 10x the company, the job, what you're working on. But to be honest, I don't think it exists. I think the reality is, you're going to have to look for a lot of small incremental benefits with AI that are going to get you to that 10x stage.
You nailed it. Speaker notes weren't even up yet.
Wow.
So let's talk about it. We all want to be Taylor Swift, 10x, biggest artist in the entire world of all time. In reality, where we all are today is Bluebird Cafe in Nashville, Tennessee, back in 2004. This is where everyone is from their GenAI journey standpoint. And if you look at this, graphically represented, in 2004, this is Taylor Swift's song plays. To 2023, her song plays up to 80 billion. Now, she didn't get there overnight, and we love DPW. They did have 10x, and you can interpret a lot of different ways. When we were kind of preparing for this, you don't just go 10x. You can't do that. What you do is you get 5% better every month, every quarter, every year, and then that builds and that builds. Like for Taylor Swift, this is a lot of breakups. There's a lot of albums that came out. There was a point in time where she was the most hated person on Twitter, now X, and then now she's back up to the biggest artist of all time. And that's what we're going to challenge everyone here. Is not about trying to find that silver bullet, this mythological thing. It's how can you get a little better? And we'll show you some examples throughout this of how we've done it with BP and how we've innovated together.
Yeah, I don't think that 10x silver bullet exists. So the whole thing about DPW this year, 10x. So can anyone guess how much annual growth you need to get over 10 years to get to 10x? So how much better each year do you need to get over 10 years?
There are no free Nikes for this answer, by the way.
Yeah. Bit lower. 10%. Bit higher. We've got a mathematician in the room here.
What did you, David Wild from Amazon?
Can you see my speaker notes from here? So just over 20%. So 20% year on year, day in, day out, will get you to 10x over 10 years. And that's the way within BP we think about AI, certainly in procurement. There's no silver bullet, but it's what can you do that's going to get you 2%? What's going to get you 3%? Collectively going to get you to that 20% a year, so you can get to that 10x over the 10 years. So I like to think about it in two different ways, the two-lensed approach. So how can we use AI to make us better procurement practitioners? So better at our jobs, save 2 minutes there, save 10 minutes another place. And then also how you can use AI to get better outcomes, bigger impacts, more savings, better results. So if we talk about how we're using AI within BP procurement to make us better at our roles, Copilot is a great example. I'm sure you all have similar technologies that are going to help you save 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. We also are looking at how we can energize people, get a bit of excitement around AI, because some people kind of, I've got a job to do, I don't really want to take the time, and other people are really excited about finding new ways to save effort, save time. So we want to try and get all of those great ideas around the organization and people learning from each other. And the last thing I wanted to share is just demystifying things. So this is some real-life code from an AI project that we are running in BP. Does anyone want to have a guess at what this does? Is that the mathematician again?
David Wild again from Amazon.
Okay, what was that?
Metadata extraction.
Pretty much, yeah, metadata extraction. So when I think about AI and how it works in practice, I expected JavaScript and Python code and gobbledygook. But when you actually look at what you need to use to get results around the AI, it's relatively simple. And what this code does, this is only a tiny snippet, but what the code does is it looks at contract changes. And it reads contracts, and it tells us where changes are occurring. And it also it tells us the materiality of those changes. So have those changes, would they cause a big impact to BP by those changes or not? I think this is a great example of where we've been able to use AI to save an hour here, an hour there. And when you actually look at the bare bones and what's under the covers, it's relatively simple.
I mean, that's why the hype is how it is right now. And when you use ChatGPT, you can actually interact with it. When's the last time anyone in their right mind, outside the world of business, outside the world of data science, was interacting with AI? Previous to that, it's similar to here, and this is not like a specific example that's like unique. Even the way we think about using RAG within Fairmarkit's platform to tie in the policies and procedures, it's literally typing it in, not to like oversimplify it, but like it's literally, you can type it in and say, if this, okay, that, consider this, all these different like actions. And like, it blew my mind the first time I saw it as well.
It's relative, yeah, I mean, look, there's complexity to it, but you can understand what it's doing. And for me, I find that really inspiring. And the other areas that we've been looking at within BP procurement, how we can apply AI are to real-life challenges. So, for example, BP spent a lot of money on contingent labor, third-party services. We know that's really difficult for a contract owner to look at timesheets that often have hundreds or thousands of rows of data on it. Quite complicated contract rules around overtime, so on and so forth, and do that consistently day in, day out in a way where we're making sure that we're paying the right people the right amount of money in the right time. We've used AI to take those thousands of rows of invoices and timesheets, compare them to contract rules, and tell us whether we should be paying or not. And for me, that's a fantastic example of where we've brought in a real external problem, had a look at how we can apply AI to that, and got some really promising results that we're hoping to scale. So back to the 10x example, you know, I wouldn't, a lot of people are on the sidelines around AI because they're waiting for the next big thing. But I'd encourage everyone to be really curious, really open-minded, get the 2%, get the 3%, you know, build up that productivity, that value around AI, and you'll soon get to wherever you want to go.
Well, and that's where we were trying to figure out, like, what's the best way to tell the BP and Fairmarkit story? Because we started working together 4 or 5 years ago, and usually at these conferences, the presentation has like this marketing slide that has all these like numbers and metrics and everything like that. That really doesn't tell the story of a partnership. That's the output from a business perspective, which, yeah, that's important. But what Nick and I were kind of come up with, like, all right, what has actually the journey been? So do you want to walk through the first half of this?
Yeah, so we started with Fairmarkit 4 or 5 years ago. And, you know, we started with a relatively straightforward scope, you know, RFQs. You know, don't shoot the messenger here, but it wasn't...
Victor's not in this room, our CTO.
Yeah, it wasn't sort of... you know, it didn't blow us away overnight, right? Day one, you did a great job. It was consistent. We got value. Now, fast forward to today. I think we've sourced 1.5 billion through you. We're seeing double-digit identified savings. If we had waited for a moment in time when we thought, wow, this is really going to blow us away, you know, let's jump straight in, maybe we would still be waiting. So I think the example here is you've got to try some of this stuff, right? You've got to create a hypothesis. You've got to do it logically. But if you don't try, you're going to be left on the sidelines. So we see that with our Fairmarkit relationship, we've started with relatively simple scope, and now we're looking at what we can do differently and new features and new functionality.
Yeah, I mean, it's Amara's law, even from a Fairmarkit perspective, for the maturity of our products. So first it was RFQ, and then RFP started using about 2 years ago. Now we're working on Kit, so for them it's the SOW creation. And it's like when you first launch something, and we try to do it with all of our customers, yeah, it's not amazing day one, but it's can we learn, can we iterate together, can we be design partners, and then get it to that next step. And then even today, which you haven't used yet, but we literally are made live today. It's not like a big launch, but negotiations as well. So like we're starting that journey, knowing it's basic right now, but let's figure out what are the right use cases to make sure it's applicable at scale and not something that's used once or twice. How can we actually get something that can be used at scale? And then the other thing that I thought was cool, and we do with Nick's team, we do with a lot of teams, is just have jam sessions. Because it's one thing for us to come and say, hey, here's our roadmap and everything. It's another thing to sit down and say, what's your team working on? What's interesting? What are executives bringing up? So do you want to walk through a couple examples?
Yeah, a couple of examples that we worked with Kevin and the team on. Diversity. So we speak to our diverse suppliers. one of the most common things that they tell us is they don't have access to opportunities. So they register on a portal, there's a lot of hope generated. That doesn't always translate to opportunities. So we took that problem to you and we said, well, how could we bring those opportunities to those diverse suppliers? So we kind of jammed a little bit, as you say.
Yeah.
And we created a marketplace where all of our opportunities that we want our diverse suppliers to be able to bid on go into one place. They can all see them. They can choose whether they want to bid on them or not, but it brings those opportunities to those suppliers. Without that jam session, we wouldn't have had.
Well, and without the mentality that GenAI doesn't solve all problems. Because usually you hear an idea like GenAI, you try to just keep going.
There's a lot of hype.
In reality, this is just, can we now make the bids accessible? Can we give the suppliers a better way to engage with BP? Mm-hmm. And it was something that we could build out in like a month and a half. So once again, it kind of gets us back to the idea of, let's not see GenAI as this all-encompassing savior across the board. Let's use it where it's applicable. Where it's not, let's still keep iterating and do it the right way.
Yeah, scope of work is another example.
Yep.
Within BP, we saw an opportunity to work with Fairmarkit to help draft scopes of work using AI. Again, we're in development, I would say. We're looking at it, but I think it's another great example of where we've jammed. We brought a real problem. We've seen what we can do about it. Can we use AI to help? Maybe, maybe not. But we're working on solutions. And I think you need to have these dialogue with your suppliers, with your partners, to really move the needle if you want to have a good chance of getting anywhere near this 10x.
Yeah, and I could call out a bunch of people in this room right now that have helped us out a ton. And every time we go into a new area, let's work with 10 customers. Let's kind of go through it together. Same thing happened with negotiations. We had people start to ask us, can we start to have this as last mile negotiations? Can we start to do it for price, for lead time, for payment terms? Not complex, but then over time, keep iterating on it. And this is kind of getting back to, from our world, how we see kind of the world of AI, autonomous sourcing, and then kind of AI assisted. Where I think AI assisted, AI augmented is actually a much bigger value add than full-blown autonomous. Because autonomous would be you can pull it in, you can automatically create the event, automatically recommend suppliers, automatically send, automatically award. But AI assisted is how do we help bring information to people that can now make a strategic decision based off of their experience, their tribal knowledge, other areas that we don't see. So in our world, we see tailspin still, let's do as much autonomous as possible. You get to tactical, AI assisted and autonomous, then once you get to strategic, super interesting, but let's not try to do full autonomous for strategic sourcing. It doesn't make any sense. It's not feasible right now. But let's use AI to say, okay, how can we help with the SOW creation? How can you help draft up the event so you're just modifying it versus creating it? How can you help with award decisions? So this is kind of the journey that we've been on. And once again, the whole idea here is just trying to demystify that GenAI is not going to solve everything and autonomous sourcing isn't a end-to-end for everything. And a lot of people ask that question. It's how do we get to 100%? You don't. But that's okay. That's not the goal. All right, so this was not a marketing made slide. This was actually Nick playing around with moving the words around. Lessons learned. So we were kind of jamming on this. So what should we cover? And Nick's mind just went to the worst things that could possibly happen.
You have to start with the worst, right? So in all seriousness, within BP, everything starts and finishes with safety. That is at the heart of whatever we do. AI is no different. So with AI, there's a lot of different safety considerations. You've got legal, you've got infrastructure, you've got data security. So everything I'm about to say is caveated by you've got to get that right first and you've got to take that seriously. But beyond that point, with AI in particular, what is the worst that could happen? Once you've got all of those squared off, maybe you had an idea that didn't work. Maybe you've got some more learnings for the next idea. Maybe it took longer than you thought. Maybe it cost more than you expected. But really, when you take a step back, when you think about what's the worst that could happen, it can be relatively minor.
Well, I think it depends on the use case as well. And I wasn't going to jump to this one, but because you made that point, security or risk by use case. We have a lot of customers that they're very okay using GenAI for their internal team for operational gains, for efficiency gains. The second we started to talk to a lot of customers about negotiations, that's a whole different layer. Because now you're talking about the brand, the reputation of the company interacting externally. And it's wild where for a lot of the data and security teams we've been talking to, as much as they're still learning, they know there's a clear delineation between those two use cases. So I just think it's let's not bucket everything into one and then maybe start not just to your point where it's there's not a lot of downside risk, but also where you can get it approved from a security standpoint. So that doesn't become a 6-month battle. Mm-hmm. Any other ones you want to call out?
I think you've got to make sure the users like it. I mean, it's probably been said a lot, but you could have the best tool in the world, but if it's not good from a user experience perspective, then it's not the best tool in the world.
Yeah, and then my final point was you don't need to be a data scientist. So please do not let that stop you from getting excited about it, from trying it out. As we showed, it's not, like I kind of thought, and we have a couple customers that are really, really technical, and I thought, like, I got to get to that level. I got to understand everything about Llama 3.1. I need to know it in case I get, like, that's not it. It's, do we know the different models? At least, do we know what they're good or they're bad at, how they're changing over time, and then what's the business value associated with that, knowing that it's going to change. And that's where, like, the way we see the future of sourcing from the demand to award side is that 5% better. So a couple areas that we're diving into, it's multi-channel. Because we think that people are not always going to go to the same place. You kind of have to meet people where they are. So whether it's their requisition, whether it's a sourcing intake, whether it's our intake, whether it's an expiring contract, be able to pull demand, have a great user experience across the different ones. Then it's multimodal. Can we actually allow people to interact how they want to interact in the platform? So that could be text, document, audio, visual. I'll show you a couple examples coming up in a little bit. But this seems to be a track of where we see the industry going. And then the final one is multimodal. And this is probably the most important one because this is not like, we thought, okay, it was OpenAI. And then it's like, okay, well, Meta came out and then for their platform. And then you kind of keep seeing the different setups. And realistically, what we understood is you just have to be flexible to allow to plug in different models to different use cases. It also is very interesting for us where there's almost like this reverse journey to the cloud for a lot of customers, where it's like actually, instead of hosting, essentially on like an OpenAI, can you start to go down to like Amazon Bedrock and host there? Or are you doing it in-house in AWS and you're running your own model there? So from that perspective, we see there's a lot of considerations, and I wish we knew the answer of what it's going to look like in 2 or 3 years. We don't. So the only way to be future-proofed is to be flexible.
I think people like options as well. If you look at the people that are probably going to be doing our jobs in the next 10 to 15 years, Gen A, Gen Z, they talk to their phones. WhatsApp voice notes, Google Assistant search. My son, I had to show him what the dialer was because he didn't realize, there's another app you can use to call people and not just through WhatsApp. Like, people just want that optionality to be able to interact with the technology in the way that suits them. So I think you're on the right track here with this.
Yeah, we didn't prepare enough because that was some of my notes right there too. I was going through actually the baby boomers all the way down to like Generation Alpha in terms of people that use it for the most basic functionality of the voice command to Generation Alpha, which are like kids, are using it actually for content creation. So if you think about that as a workforce in 10, 15 years, that's where this doesn't become like, oh, it's a cool factor. This is a necessary requirement to make sure that you're bringing kind of like how they're learning, how they're being productive into that professional world. So next slide. So whenever time I like jam with Nick, and I do it with a lot of customers, we don't just want to build things to be flashy. It's like, how do we do it in a way that's going to drive real value? And Nick kind of grinds me a lot on like guiding principles. So I wanted to walk through like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things for me is you've got to be solving a real problem. I think there's a lot of excitement when we jam, there's a lot of energy created, but you've got to be solving a real challenge that's an important thing to be solved. The second, I've talked about it before, but it's got to be good for the users. The end user experience has got to be right. And then the third, probably most important lesson that I've learned in the garage is just keep it simple. There's a tendency just to go out and do everything, but understanding what are the right things to do at the right time. Are they real problems?
Yeah.
Guiding principle for me.
And this is I'm going to show a concept car demo.
I haven't seen this, by the way.
Nick hasn't seen this, and I purposely didn't show it to him because I want to get his reaction in real time. So this is a demo. It's one example of multimodal. There's obviously a lot of different ones. This is an example of Erin. So Erin's on the factory floor. She's 2 months into the company, has no idea what the policies are, the procedures, doesn't know at all what a P2P is, but something in the factory broke, and she has to order more. So first thing she'll do is, we'll see if this works, goes to her Fairmarkit app. So she'll log in, Intelligent Assistant, and it says, take a photo. She don't know how to describe it. She had a couple drinks last night at the party. She zooms in. Cool. She gets what it is. Now GenAI is understanding what exactly is this. So it's going to go back, and once again, AI assisted. It's going to confirm, is this the cooling coil that you asked for? You can speak. Yes, it is. Got it. Next it's going to say, do you need it by 3 like last time? It remembers it from the past. Yes, let's go with 3. And the next is going to say, how fast do you need it by? Next 2 weeks. Cool. That's all we got from Erin. So now what's going to happen in the background is AI is going to say, all right, let's figure out how to route this. So we don't need an SOW. Let's actually create the event for you. Let's recommend suppliers. let's determine the optimal strategy, and let's create the requisition. So here it's saying the strategy should be single run event, autonomous sourcing, autonomous negotiation for price with the top 2 suppliers, and then AI recommended award. Don't just make the award decision, bring it back to Erin to confirm it so she has control. Phone back in her pocket, goes about her day. Next thing it's doing is it's searching the supplier database. And it's saying, all right, of all the suppliers, let's boost the ones that we feel like are most critical based off our data and their preferences. We then use GenAI to say, let's set up the event, because no one likes to build the event. This is all happening in the background. The sections, the questions, putting it in as well. Next, we need to make that event available to the suppliers that we selected, also to the marketplaces. So the ESG, Amazon Business Marketplace, Fairmarkit's Marketplace. So now the event's published. 24, 48 hours, the bids start coming in. And just as the strategy said, it's going to take the top 2 and simultaneously kick off the negotiation. Once again, Erin's going about her day. She's at a cookout right now. I'm not sure what she's doing. So negotiation goes through. So now it's starting to go based off of what you want the tone of the brand to be. You can set that. Also, what we want the parameters to be. For this, it was price. It could be payment terms, once again. It could be lead time. But it's going to go through in real time, confirm the updated quote, and then now the next thing we need to do is bring this back to Erin. So she gets a notification on her phone, hopefully not on her phone playing games or anything like that. She gets it, and it's going to say, we got 2 bids back. One from preferred supplier is $38,000. One's from a Black-owned business, it's $40,000. I would normally award it to the preferred, but you have an ESG initiative. Should I award it to the Black-owned business? Go for it. Thanks for the help kit. And then that finishes the purchase. So it creates the requisition, goes into the P2P. Also, Erin's company, they have an ESG program, so she also gets an award. It's a donation in her name for saving money and for working with a diverse supplier. So that's the flow that we're thinking about in the future. Obviously, there's going to be several different variations of that. But Nick, you've never seen that before. Feel free to be constructive.
Genuinely haven't seen that before. Yeah. I mean, it ticks a lot of boxes there. I mean, you've nailed the vision. I think the most important thing is, as a customer, whether that comes exactly true, feature for feature, or whether just as a North Star, as a direction. You get closer and maybe you'll change a little bit, maybe you'll react. For me, that's the most important thing, but it's great to see.
Yeah, and it's, once again, this is not what is available today in Fairmarkit. That's a lot of Fairmarkit kind of pulled together as what one of the user journeys can be. But there's going to be a lot of different user journeys. All right, so we're going to end on this. And the timing's actually, it's going to hit. Everyone wants to be Taylor Swift.
The Taylor Swift of AI.
The Taylor Swift of AI. Everyone wants to be 10x. In reality, as we said earlier, GenAI is a movement. Now, has anyone seen this video? Yeah, this is a good one. So it's like 3 minutes long. I didn't think we were going to have time. But essentially, this is the creating of a movement. So it's at a music festival, which I think you were at. No, it's at a music festival.
Yeah.
And there was this...
I was there with Erin, I think.
Yeah. There was this one nut. And the nut was dancing in the field, looking kind of crazy. And then a second nut comes. And then more people come. Then more people come. And then now these are still early adopters. These are still people that are creating the movement. And then at a certain point, everyone's coming. And it's not socially acceptable or the right thing to do to stay out of the movement. So the ask is, like Nick and I shared our dance moves, it's to see what nuts we have in this room. And we're going to give out Nike shoes.
Trainers for nuts. Trainers for nuts.
Yeah, trainers. Yeah. We're going to give them out to anyone that comes up on stage and dances in our jump rope. So once again, you come up, we'll give out as many Nikes as people come up. Can we play the music, please?
Let's do it.
Who's coming up?
Come on.
Who's coming up?
That's it.